Welcome to partialarc.com. Don't do that.
You find yourself in a tavern.
Oh, we should have checked for traps.
I knew he forgot something.
I think I can reason with him.
You killed his father.
Can I have sex with it?
You could certainly try.
I'm gonna touch a sword.
Don't touch the sword.
The child is evil, right?
Obviously.
I could cast Fireball.
Always cast fireball.
All right, roll for it. Welcome to Friday Night Quests. I'm your host and Dungeon Master, Jay Jones. We're back with our Aftermath episode for Season 17. So I'm going to sit down with Daniel, our special guest, Stu Wellington, and Mike Christensen, and we're going to go over some of the designs for this adventure and some of the questions you guys had. So let's dive in and answer those now. Also, a special announcement, if you haven't heard already, Partial Arc is going to be at Gen Con this year. So we're going to be showing off a board game that we designed. That's right, we made a board game called Mortals. And we'll be showcasing that at the First Exposure Playtest Hall Friday through Saturday. That's August 18th through August 19th. So come out, say hi to us. If you guys just want to talk about Friday Night Quests or if you want to play the game, either way, we'd love to see you. With that out of the way, let's dive into the Aftermath.
Yeah, this is probably series wrap on Stu Wellington too, right?
Hopefully, if it's any good.
Series wrap on Stu Wellington, everybody.
If he's lucky. I think if we see Stu again, it will not be a good thing.
Yeah.
Hey, how are all those kids doing? Not great.
Not awesome. World's ending still.
Did you let the world blow up?
I hope not.
Find out. Shall we kick things off?
I might leave that in.
Fair enough.
We are joined... Jay Jones and myself, Mike Christensen, joined by Daniel Fernandez, who played Stu the Maniac Wellington.
Hey guys.
A little bit less of a maniac this time around, a little bit more of a voice of reason.
I thought you were going to say more of a stew.
I mean, yeah, he was.
Yeah, he sort of has a different feeling. It's being
like a dad, really.
Yeah, being a dad, I guess. Being a caretaker for everybody.
It's almost like if you have to take care of like 20 kids, you have to develop responsibility.
And then a number of refugees.
Yeah.
That's true.
We're talking about Season 17, and you were there for kind of a key moment in the Velvet League history.
Yeah, where I came back and discovered you're all assholes.
Yeah, that was an important one, I think.
He missed that the first time, I guess.
Well,
17. Oh, yeah, that was the season they were all assholes.
It very much was. And we even had a conversation, I think, during one of our breaks, where you turned to us and you're like, am I coming on too harsh? And Kelly's like, we've earned it. Okay. we have deserved a little bit of... an awakening, a moment of clarity.
Yeah, because I felt bad because, you've heard the episode, listeners, probably, or you're listening to the Aftermath first because you make choices, whatever. You're like, oh, Daniel.
Flip to the end of the book first.
Yeah, exactly. I want to hear what Daniel says, but not his character. But, like, I was hitting you guys really, really irritated by all of this, and I was, for a second, thinking that, like, oh, man, am I... the asshole, like, but it felt.
I promise you are not.
But it felt like that was what Stu's character was going to do. But I didn't want to use that as an excuse to be just like Mr. Downer, like jerk pants.
Yeah, no, I understand that because, and I've had conversations with people as well. And I've written about this before. Like, what my character would do is very much like can go wrong. Yeah. Because it's a great way for people to excuse bad behavior.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what was happening in this case.
I swear my character would kill all of these innocent civilians.
Like, you joke, but I've seen people basically make that defense. Yeah. Like, I've seen characters like abandon the party because it's what my character would do. That's clearly trapped. Yeah. And you know that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I admire it because it's really avoiding metagaming. And sometimes it's like, all right, you're just going to be a douchebag. That's not fun for us.
Yeah, I think that's always the line to walk. I'm anti-metagaming in most situations. Well, it depends on what you're doing. Hell, if you're playing Tomb of Horrors, you're probably going to be doing some metagaming. Like, you're not...
You're walking in there and be like, guys, I think this is a regular house. This is where we can set up camp for the night.
Yeah, and this is not at all biased by the fact that my DM told me to bring 3 characters.
Yeah.
I'm sure everything's cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get number 2 character.
Yeah, but thankfully, you guys on Friday Night Quest have the players more or less know what they're doing. They got their character set up, and they're not complete, metagaming tools about everything.
No, just me.
Yeah. Hey, there's nothing wrong with trying to succeed.
It's funny because we were very much like, in a couple seasons ago, and we were like, we're gonna stick around to the Velvet League or stick around to the Kemp Estates and like build a little home. And then the minute that Jay's like, all right, you're here home alone, it's like, oh God,
Yep.
Jay Jones.
I was half hoping that you guys would do some pure shenanigans, but it was definitely not to the level that it ended up being.
So what was your expectation? Because you gave Horace the keys to the Kemp Estate, essentially.
Essentially, the idea was, what would Horace do if he was king for a day, basically? And with all the resources and everything that a king would have at the Kemp Estates, and see what happened. And he didn't disappoint, I guess. In my expectations.
Yeah, that pretty much lined up with how I would think Horace would do things, and Izzy as well.
And turns out Izzy, a big enabler of these shenanigans.
Yeah, I don't know what Stu saw in Izzy, because wowzers.
You met her at a different time in her life.
Yeah.
Clearly.
And in yours, let's be fair.
Yeah.
I think you've matured a little bit being with the kids, and we have regressed notably.
I mean, I guess if you wanted to take that whole situation, if you really wanted to like psychoanalyze it, it's kind of like you guys have been through so much that you went so heavy in the opposite direction as far as like everything's fine. Look, we've got a room like filled with squirrels and pillows. Like the world's totally fine,
Everything's
guys.
cool. And then for Sweeney, he was the one who like really was the most aware of what was going on in the world, if anyone was. I think it's safe to say that none of the Velvet League really got the scope of it, but he'd been having those secret meetings with the Second, which we'll come back to in just a minute.
Oh, really?
But he was the one who like knew at least some things. So for him, it really was like denial. Like it was really like, hey, like we shouldn't be talking about what's going on in the world. Now for Mike, it was a little different.
Yep.
Because I remembered how the season had ended. But then when we start rolling, there's so many things going on in your head, and we're trying to figure out, like, all right, we got your spells prepared, got to get everything ready. And then Jay's like, all right, Mike, what have you been doing? What has Sweeney been doing? And I was like, I don't know. Well, he doesn't have Jiggy Whore around, and he's got cabin fever. He's never been in one place for very long, so he's trying to scam people out of money. Oh, an accidental birthday party. So that'll be like a fun gag. And then you sent me to a birthday party, and it was the Second was there. I was like, yeah, we really didn't address that at all.
Nope.
Jay and I forgot to have a conversation about that.
We did.
Jay and I hang out very frequently.
I completely forgot to be like, oh, by the way,
here's what the
meeting with the
said to
Second.
you. It wasn't surprising. Unfortunately, Sweeney's enough of a tool that we just assume everything that I said for the first 30 minutes of the episode was a lie.
It worked out. I mean, you got what I was laying down pretty quickly, where I was like, you're going somewhere, aren't you? And you're like, yeah, I had some place to be. And then sure enough, I was like, and you got there, and there's nobody there, and you go to the room. Like, you caught him pretty
No,
fast.
not at all.
Oh, really? Great.
Until you said the Second was there, I was like, oh, that makes more sense. This makes a
Awesome.
lot of sense.
Never mind.
I guess I'm just going to roll with this. It's because you and I know this show really well. And again,
I would hope so at this point.
hopefully, the 112 episodes by now. And also, because Sweeney's an asshole, and like, I was like, all right, I guess he was just lying to everyone.
Totally lying to his buds.
Makes sense. Totally makes sense. So when he was saying things like, don't follow me and don't ask what I'm doing, Mike thought Sweeney was going to a birthday party still.
And he was just trying to hide the shame that he was just dicking around at birthday parties.
And then retroactively, that was his way of rationalizing, well, Sweeney would never tell them he was at a birthday party. He'd spread the rumor and then deny it vehemently. This still makes sense. This still works out.
Yeah, still tracks.
It worked for me. I didn't know.
I hit it so well. Sweeney hit it so well, even from himself.
And then it was really funny because then we met the child. Mm-hmm. The child showed up. And that scene was really interesting. And Daniel, I think you can speak to that as well, because we would have moments where we were like, I don't know if I'm in the right on this one.
Yeah, I don't. The whole thing was weird, and I think
because we definitely didn't trust that kid.
Yeah, everything about the child was. I think that's part of the reason that it was so the whole thing was so dang long too.
This was, we should say, one of our longest recording sessions.
Oh, for sure.
Because we spent a lot of time with the child and not a lot of time with the bubbles, which we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, the thing is that I just decided early on that Stu was not gonna have anything, especially he was gonna protect the kid, and he definitely didn't trust outsiders, and he also didn't trust you guys anymore.
No,
so
valid.
You guys were very different from the last time I saw
because
you.
because if you could have like talked to Stu and convinced him of something if you guys were different people, but like he had come in, he's like, oh right, you guys are the 1%, and you're fiddling while Rome burns right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, no, this kid's not going to die.
Also, when you rolled an insight check on the child, you spectacularly failed. And I was like, all right, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, story-wise and character-wise, that makes perfect sense. And
It did work, yeah.
And we just kind of nodded. We're like, yeah, this tracks. And this is going to make things really interesting because you drew a sword on Izzy at one point.
That's
Yeah.
true.
And I was just like sitting there like, man, like even I know Jay has other stuff planned probably, but like if this is just the game, I'm very happy because like this is intense.
It's just, how do you guys deal with a godchild?
Which we didn't know what it was at the time, and then the army showed up, and you brought that army to us. What was your expectation with the army coming in?
The army, the expectation was for it to play out similar to how it kind of played out. To be fair, I should have understood what was going on and like how these things were going to escalate, and I probably should have gotten those two out of the Kemp estates a little bit faster than I did.
But it also made sense that like once we were like giving them illusion children, they're like, all right, we need to see this kid.
Yeah, we
It's
need
like,
to see the child.
It made sense. It's just like, unsurprisingly, Sweeney makes everyone's lives more difficult.
And everything went real sideways with the bubbles and...
Oh, the bubbles.
And it was like at that time, you guys had no idea like what was outside. And it was just like, I was like, I know there's still an entire thing that has to happen. And then a whole nother thing after that. So
yeah, there were a lot of checkpoints you had to hit, I'm sure. That must be quite a balancing act.
This season was definitely the most plate spinning I've ever had in the air, I think, for any season, for sure.
Yeah, I apologize if I made it too difficult there.
No, not at all. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed all the stuff with the kid. I think maybe I let it go on for a little bit too long. I thought you guys were going to figure out very quickly, which you guys did sort of, that the kid was not a kid. But I didn't realize that one of you was going to fail so spectacularly that you would then defend against everybody else. And I was like, oh, this is great.
I think Stu eventually figured out even that the kid wasn't a kid, but was still going to be like, well, I'm going to defend it anyway.
And then there was the moment, too, where like the blackguard shows up and we're like, I mean, these guys, though, also no.
Also not
right?
them.
Not these guys, though.
Which was, there was a theme for this adventure, and it was a bit like, what is good is basically what the theme of this adventure was in so many unsettled ways or subtle ways of like, well, you've got a kid who's not what he says he is, clearly, and he's also not good. He's also not like, oh, it's me, Bahamut, like, help me out, buddy. It's like, no, this is an evil god. Like, this is I think a lawful evil is Sekula. And then it was also like, these Templar-looking dudes are also not good.
Not on the level.
So, what is good, and what does the Velvet League define as good?
Stu knew what good was.
Yes. Stu is on the side of good most of the time, side of the Angels.
Yeah.
Sweeney, definitely, of course. He had some really bright, shiny moments during that season.
Yeah, definitely didn't commit a war crime.
Jesus.
It was funny because after the recording, there was a moment where Jeremy was like, poor Stu is like the nicest person we've ever met.
Yeah.
And we're sending him to another continent with just a flood of refugees. Hey, buddy, bye. Oh, I know you want to protect this kid, but you can't have him. Or maybe all of your kids will be murdered by a god butcher.
It was weird how that happened, because when I first made Stu, he wasn't like this super nice dude. He was just sort of a bruiser.
He was a wrestler.
Yeah, a performer.
Yeah, he was a performer, and like, I didn't mean for him to, and I just had like a connection to kids because I was just like, I decided that on the spot when it was like, oh, we have to rescue some children. Cool, Stu, like,
he's an entertainer.
Kids,
he's good with kids. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it made sense.
Yeah,
but then the way that plot worked out with a bunch of orphan children at the end of it, and also I was like, okay, cool. Here is a reason for Stu to get out of here. Like, okay, I'm gonna set up an orphanage. Yada yada yada.
Yeah, it made sense narratively for him to leave the Velvet League and not keep hanging out with us, which is always kind of a tricky thing to balance depending on the character, because sometimes like, why are we not bringing them with them all the time?
Yeah, true. Sometimes they just leave the next day and we don't really have, why didn't we have that exit scene with them in the next season?
Yeah, but that sort of changed Stu's personality, because I was like, oh, okay, this is his motivation. He's about protecting the kids. And then Then we had that side series where we went to Shimmer City, where I decided that, like, I had in the back of my mind that he had, like, crime connections when he was more like the evil, not evil, but the more like
chaotic neutral.
Chaotic. I think it was just true neutral as a background. But then it was like, oh, but now he's like this good guy with the kids. He's got to protect the kids. And I realized that I accidentally created. This is for all of you fans of video games out there. If you ever played the series of video games called Yakuza, I accidentally created the character Kazuma Kiryu, who is like who is a guy who is like a fighting dude who ends up accidentally running an orphanage, and
Oh wow!
Yeah, literally.
That's dead on specific.
And here's the thing: I was not thinking of that when I was like, Stu's gonna like help run the orphanage, and I was telling my wife. My wife actually listened to the podcast with me, and she's like, "Oh, this is kind of interesting." She said, "You made Kiryu from Yakuza," and I'm like, "What? Oh shoot, yeah, I totally did."
That's amazing.
If it helps, I accidentally based Sweeney on Mad Sweeney from American Gods. Okay, totally forgot he was an influence on that character.
Yeah,
that is really funny though.
Yeah, and that's that game's called Yakuza, so he's like, I'm an ex-Yakuza and I want to get out, but loyalty to the family, that totally tied in. But that was really weird that I stumbled across.
You just subconsciously made that character. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to take a quick moment and bring to one of our fan questions.
Oh, yeah. We have a couple that were sent in, right?
Fan questions you can send to us through Twitter using the hashtag Aftermath. And this is a question from Archangel. It's for the cast, but since we don't have the full cast here, it'll pretty much just be for Daniel and I. The question is, if all goes to hell, what are each person's number 2 characters, if they have one?
Well,
you're kind of a different situation because you're a guest, but we're Stu to fall and someone else to enter his story in place.
I mean, I don't know if Stu's. I don't know if you're going to include that. We were joking around beforehand that this is probably a series wrap on Stu Wellington. But I've been thinking of. I really liked Stu because I was like a fighter and spellcasting. But I don't know. I'd be a monk maybe.
Yeah.
I don't really know about. Because I was like, oh, I'm going to be a grappler, but I refuse to play monk. Maybe it's time to play a monk.
Maybe it's time to give them a try.
They feel like sometimes like a lot of people's like secret second backup class sometimes. Because there's been times I've been like, but what's going on with those monks though?
Yeah.
Pretty neat over there.
Because Jay is a dyed-in-the-wool ride-or-die bard.
Oh, absolutely.
But you've definitely cast a wandering eye on the monk from time to time.
Yeah, and I mean, in the game that you ran, Daniel, where we were, temporarily these characters in this kind of like a horror story or fable, I was a monk basically with one warlock level, but like basically a monk, and a lot of fun. Love that stuff.
Monk's good. I think I'd want to maybe play around with an evil monk, like a lawful evil sort of thing. You guys aren't doing Forgotten Realms, but like I find the Dark Moon monks like fascinating. I don't, also they get cool powers in like the old editions, but that's not really the point.
No, never. It's always about the story and not our cool shit that we can do.
Yeah. I find the idea of just like somebody who is like extremely organized and focused, and that's the lawful part, and they're probably not going to break any laws, but they're just like a complete dick, just like incredibly greedy, selfish, heartless, just like, I'm going to perfect my body to be the ultimate weapon, and I'm also going to make a lot of money maybe along the way, and I don't care if anybody gets in my way. Sort of like the evil martial artist like archetype. Yeah.
That's interesting. You're kind of like the beginning of like the villain to any like classic like kung fu movie.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like your origin story.
Or every boss in Street Fighter or King of Fighters or whatever.
My name will be M. Bison.
Yeah. Though actually, M. Bison's actually like I could go into a whole thing. He's like a demon, and like he put his good side into a small girl, so he removed his entire good side so he would only be evil, so he could be more in touch with the
you guys ruined
Satsu
the
no
twist
Hodu
of Friday Night Quest. It's M. Bison was the final boss. Damn it. Damn it.
I always felt that if Sweeney died in the line of duty and didn't come back through resurrection, that...
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. I think at this point...
When you guys are at level like 19, like it's
hard to figure out...
It's,
how is this guy not going to come back next time? Because Izzy has true resurrection.
Well, there's a...
That's true. Well, I guess that's true.
We'll get there.
It's always possible now. But I thought it would have been interesting to include someone who was sort of the exact opposite of Sweeney, someone who's a sorcerer who was much more militaristic and more driven. Sort of someone who'd maybe like been a bounty hunter their whole life and used magic to perform these tasks, and as opposed to the sort of wild, weird, wild magic, they'd be more like the draconic magic, more focused, elemental damage kind of character. At this point, I think that would be just a strange character to introduce so late game.
Yeah.
So I think what I'd probably want to do is basically, Jay, I don't know if you ever read a lot of Iron Fist comics, but I want to play Fat Cobra, basically. I just want to be Fat Cobra. He's a sumo wrestler who's faster than he is strong, and he's very strong.
And his name is Fat Cobra.
I'd call him something else probably, but I definitely want to play like you. It's the monk idea.
You'd be Fat Cobra, but PHAT.
That's not how you spell Cobra.
Boo. For both of us.
Back to the adventure. When we went outside, there was an army.
Yeah, there was.
And then it was just us figuring out how to deal with an army. And that was interesting because we kind of had to, and it was at a certain point, Daniel and Jeremy especially were kind of on like defense mode while Kelly and I were dealing with Godchild stuff.
Yeah, I think I found that very interesting, and it was interesting to see the way that you were running it, Jay, because if anybody listens to Dark Heresy, I've done a couple of times where like, oh, there's going to be a huge battle going on, like, how are we going to approach this? I maybe do that more often than I should on Dark Heresy, but I just find
I like it.
Yeah.
No complaints from me. That series is great.
Oh, well, thank you. But because of that, in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. This is like the other side of the like big battle situation. Not that you guys necessarily, sometimes you guys do good planning. Sometimes you just kind of wing it.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
Mostly wing it, I think.
Yeah. Only when I set up like here are a bunch of characters who are going to talk to you about your battle plans will you guys come up with anything.
They have good ideas because you guys are dummies.
Yeah. But that's the sort of stuff that I'm really interested in. I find D&D combat to be sometimes boring, which is why I actually have moved away from D&D in a lot of the games that I play. Admittedly, I say this, I'm actually running a D&D campaign with my wife and a couple people, but
hypocritical bastard.
But I'm much more interested in playing games that are bigger. The combat is more narrative, which you did a really good job of being like, okay, these are the big things here, but also like, hey, you're actually using like specific moves that are in the D&D, rule book. Like even in Dark Heresy, I'm just like, I don't know, just roll a ballistics check and we'll just extrapolate it out. And it's fine.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
it'll look cool.
I'll just do it.
We figured out some of that stuff too with like, Jay wasn't going to roll 20 D8s and then 20 different rolls to figure out who's affected by prismatic spray and that kind of stuff. So we have to play it by ear a little bit.
Yeah, and I think you struck a really good balance because it could have been very easily that could have just turned into the longest thing in the world.
Oh my God.
And
yes.
like when you were, I'm going to be honest, like that was a very long session because I pulled a sword on Kelly and like there was this whole,
No, I'm sorry. Just clarify. Stu pulled a sword on Izzy.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, guys, it got real tense when we were recording. It was a pretty tense room.
Very clear. Everyone's still friends with the characters.
I don't actually own a sword anymore.
She took it from him.
No, when Stu pulled a sword on Izzy, and that went really, really long. And like you were saying that maybe it was a little too long. I don't think it was, but it was getting close to it.
It's only because I knew what was still around.
But I was like, oh my God, we're going to do like
what
this
time is it?
Huge
Oh boy.
fight. And like I told my wife, like, yeah, we're going to be recording. It shouldn't be too long. Like it'll be a little long, but I should be back by such and such time.
And then you see an army.
Yeah, and I was like, oh God, okay, so we're just going to do all of this. And yeah, the combat was long, but I think you did a very good job of keeping it mixed up and interesting. It's a better job than I would have done.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I will take that compliment.
Yeah.
I will say one thing that helped us was the ally that we got. We have a fan question from at Gaunt Philosophy. For Jay, were you surprised at all when the League, parentheses, Horace, question mark, decided to seek the help of Umbernacht?
I was.
So that wasn't factored in?
I thought about Umbernacht, but I just thought you guys were going to... You guys had a lot of different powers, and I knew Izzy could turn into a silver dragon, so I was prepared for some type of dragon shenanigans. Did not think you guys would get the aid of Umbernacht. Now, I didn't think it changed too much of the battle. If anything, I think it helped move it along a little bit more.
Oh, most assuredly,
It definitely made it more cinematic.
And it allowed you guys, in my opinion, to really focus in on like some of the key enemies, right? Like if the soldiers are kind of like the fluff of the fight, like the waves crashing against you, the hard rocks and things you were breaking against was the fire giant, and obviously the 5 black guard and the war priest, who you, Mike, as Sweeney, completely just neutered right out the gate.
Yeah. It also meant that we could keep all the other bronze keepers in the estate.
Exactly.
And kind of really just keep the people on the board very minimalized.
Because I was expecting with like the bronze keepers and the gold keepers that you guys had, and some of the civilians inside, as well as the the gnomes, the servants in the house, to have like you guys to give them specific things to do, and I would just kind of cinematically play out how that would work with the other soldiers and things. But with Umbernock throwing in there, that was kind of acting like those servants and soldiers to being on the field with you in the form of a giant dragon, which Stu, you making him gigantic was even more fun to have like this and like again fun for the character of Umbernock, because his whole thing is he feels so small and belittled by a silver dragon that lives in his area, that it was a great thing for just that character to feel like he's this big, powerful, almost like ancient dragon.
That definitely changed the fight, I think, in our advantage.
Oh, for sure. I mean, having a huge dragon that could do acid breath was, that was a big deal.
Yeah, fighting a death knight though, never super easy. Definitely don't want to one-on-one him in an energy cage, I found out.
That was a great surprise moment for you, where you're like, oh, I got this guy, he's trapped in a cage with me. It was very much like
he was like 80 damage.
And then he was just like, oh, let me stab you with this sword.
I wasn't expecting him to be the boss.
Like, oh, where's your boss? Yeah,
It's me.
There's a sword in me. Mercifully, we managed to do a lot of damage to him from far away. I think only a couple of us ever mixed it up with him. Because even Horace didn't really fight him that much.
No, he got lucky and like knocked him off and then pinned a fire giant on top of him, which was a great move and lucky, because he's mean.
I think
very mean.
Krask got 2 hits total, one on Stu in the energy bubble, and then 1 fire blast on, I guess it would have been Izzy and Umbernock. Took a fire blast from him, and then I killed him.
Yeah, I think Krask definitely showed that Stu, maybe not the best optimized character in the world.
Stu is narratively and fluff related motivated for his levels, I believe.
Yes.
I mean, he also can do 80 damage in one round, which is bad for literally any of you.
Yeah.
No, that would be quite sucky.
Also, like, he wasn't even acting at some of the crazy stuff that I had given him. If any of you guys were, again, in like a bubble type scenario, it could have been pretty dire.
Yeah.
So you guys played it very well.
I'd like to ask how you guys reacted when the fight was over and Sweeney kept attacking that woman, because I was not okay for about 3 days afterwards. When I was thinking about that scene, I was like, Sweeney went to some dark ass places in this episode.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what? I'm not gonna lie. Somehow I forgot about that until you brought it up right now, because we're recording this a little bit afterwards.
Yeah, it's been a while. It just came out on iTunes, but it was about a month ago when we recorded it.
Maybe I blocked it out. I don't know. That was really weird. Yeah, that was some rough stuff.
It was intense. You and I,
I think Daniel's reaction as Stu was genuine. Just a genuine reaction of like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, I know why Sweeney did it, and I know exactly why he did it, because he's tired of people that we fight coming back and killing him. So like, even though this person's, going to be rendered useless for 30 days, like in 31 days, as he says, like, I don't trust that she won't be a problem again at that point. I don't know what spells she has. I don't know what she can do. So he went ahead and did something. And afterwards I was like, I may have to take a look at his alignment, because that's not okay.
Yeah, that's one of those interesting things where we were talking about earlier, like metagame stuff, or like, this is something my character would do, because that's an example of something where it'd be just like, oh, this is some guy being a dude, no, I'm just going to stab her anyway, and everyone's like, no, don't stab her. And it's like, that's what my character would do. Yeah. But like, it actually played out in an interesting,
it played out
good way.
Very dramatic and very emotionally driven. I mean, for me, it was very shocking, but also like, I'm talking to 2 other seasoned DMs and GMs here, that like anytime you can get your players to like really commit to a scene and to like an emotional state, I mean, you kind of sit back and feel pretty good about the whole outcome. So
Yeah.
I was shocked, but I also wasn't going to like stop it.
No, it was
Yeah.
really just, Stu wrestling me to the ground and me using magic to stop him from silencing me.
Yeah.
That was an intense scene. And then the campaign took a little bit of a turn.
Yeah. At what point?
As we met an individual named Vecht, who seems to be our primary antagonist. I don't know why I pronounced it that way. Our primary antagonist.
It's
That's a
fun to
secret
pronounce
name.
words wrong. Rest in peace, Gormo. He never should have worked for the Kemps. I made that very clear.
You did.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing.
I have a couple questions specifically about Gormo.
Okay.
From fans. From Ron Epps at WR Epps. How long have you known about Gormo's story arc?
I guess he means when he says Gormo's story arc, which is a very tasteful way to not spoil
I appreciate that.
the
Very
last
much appreciate
episode.
that.
Thank you very much for now being like, hey, how long did you know that Gormo was going to get murdered at the end of that season? I've known about Gormo's outcome for a little while. To be quite honest, there were quite a few heads on the block that could have been the outcome of that scenario. But it became very apparent as things were going on and on in certain seasons and things like that was probably going to be Gormo. That was probably going to be the outcome for him, just because, I mean, obviously when Gormo was originally conceived, that was definitely not like, oh, and then he will be this character in many side adventures and like meet all these other, like he was a joke character that
Yeah.
Horace had as a servant.
He really did spawn from the joke of like,
Hey, what is he doing when he's off getting sandwiches? For
yeah, I
everybody?
think it was when Javier Egregio Markswatch was on the show, and we gave Gormo an axe, and then we left him alone, and we came back and he'd killed 3 direwolves. Javier's like, oh, he's an expanded universe character. I understand.
Yeah.
And then we really leaned into that joke and like really gave him like side adventures and like fleshed out his character, and it kind of made him key to the plot. I was looking forward to, if we survived this and if Isolde makes it out, I wanted to send him back to try to get that oath bow. And be
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm gonna go get that thing. But yeah, so he at what point did you know he was gonna be the one whose head would
It was
roll?
about a season or two ago, and there was like a lot of like options, and I knew very seriously that this character was going to have to leave a mark, not going to show up and be like, hey, I'm the bad guy, and then
You're
like
talking about Vecht?
yeah, Vecht, and like Vecht would be released and he would be not released, but he would be sent away. He wasn't just gonna like come in and scare people and then disappear. He was going to have to leave a mark on the Velvet League, and there were quite a few options early on, and this was something like that I discussed also with the other producers of the show, Andrew and Niels, about like what those options were and what I was thinking.
I'm
and
assuming the Kemps were pretty much all on the...
there were some Kemps, like there was a couple options there, and then there was even at one point like maybe the guest of that season as well.
Oh, that would have been interesting. I would have been down for that.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
Stu
fortunately,
getting murdered.
because it was you, that actually would have worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but yeah, it was settled on Gormo.
Not specifically, I mean, because you're a GM and a DM and you would have understood. Like,
Yeah.
if we'd had a special guest like, hey, welcome to D&D for the first time. Stab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, this is how you play the game. Also, I'm going to murder you, and you can't do anything about it.
And you can never come back.
Bye. But yeah, it was about a few seasons ago, really settled on like, yeah, this has to be Gormo. It was a sad decision to have Gormo be the one to get the axe, quote unquote, or the murder. And we'll see. I mean, I'm not going to say, obviously, we kind of left it at a bit of a cliffhanger for this season.
They're going to try to bring it back.
Magic exists.
They're going to try to bring him back, and we'll see how that goes.
I mean, Sweeney knows a thing or two about dying and coming back, though he didn't get killed by the boss of the whole campaign.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say boss. It's not a video game, but you know what I mean.
We do know. I mean, he's
Yeah.
also in charge of all the people that we've been killing.
This is true. This is true.
Like, he's been working with some people that we know. He is, to my understanding, and I could be totally wrong about this, but he referenced at least one person who he was mentoring, so
Yeah.
he's someone's boss.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could probably say that he's probably gonna be the final antagonist for the Velvet League.
Yeah, death for a recurring character is really interesting. Not to get too far into what we were doing with Dark Heresy. Also, spoilers. We're not going to get into that, but we had a character die in that, and we actually ended up stopping our game and like talking for 15, 20 minutes about like, do we really want to do this? Like,
holy shit, this is a very serious decision
and
for
like,
this.
You were talking about how like you had this planned out like in advance, and that was just something that we stumbled across in the game.
It was a very natural. I felt like very narrative. In that moment.
And this is something that's in the most recent Dark Heresy season, right?
Most recent Dark Heresy season.
Okay.
Yeah, check it out. But yeah, just dealing with the death of a character is super. Well, I guess you had Sweeney die like a million times. I guess it's a little different.
But it's also I mean, with those, it was funny because we kind of. The first time Sweeney died, we didn't really have time to react out of character. Mm-hmm. So much as for me, I think we took a break when the fight ended, or we took a break when our characters took a long rest. And at that point, I turned to Jay and I was like, I'm not going to talk into the mic anymore until Sweeney's alive again, if he is. Which at that point, we hadn't discussed resurrection rituals or anything like that. We kind of established,
it wasn't planned.
We kind of established through Sweeney that the first one is a gimme. So on Friday Night Quest, it's like, all right, the first resurrection's free, and then anything beyond that, you're really starting to test the limits, especially if you die twice in a week.
Yep. And I mean, we had the second time around, like, you guys make checks and things to bring Sweeney back. Like, we were definitely, like, taking the approach that death does have meaning, and it's not an easy, like, on and off switch with one power, even though the power does work that way. Yeah. But it was to obviously add a little bit of weight to it. And
never let the rules get in the way of the story.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can certainly say that I don't think Vector would be a very good villain if he didn't at least live up to one thing he made a statement about. So we'll see how things pan out.
I don't think anyone in the Velvet League has very optimistic hopes about the Resurrection Ritual, but I think we owe it to ourselves after bringing Sweeney back to life twice to try,
And for characters being at the level that you guys are going to be very soon, which is the highest level in D&D, which as a DM is the highest I've ever played a game with characters. I mean, it's the highest you can go.
I've never been in or run a game with this characters this high level.
And the thing is, at that point, when the powers are like, wish and things like that exist, you have to kind of bring something back to the table that's been gone. And I think death is such a important factor to keep that kind of level of tension in a story.
Wish is such a crazy spell, man.
It is.
They made it so much costlier in 5th edition, which I think is really
that's why Sweeney had it for one season and lost it.
It's gone.
It was funny. The other D&D game I'm running, which I hypocritically running after dissing D&D. We were my wife's playing a spellcaster, and she's looking at her spells, and we were talking about the wish spell. They were maybe they got a wishing ring and they'd be able to cast wish, and we were all like, yeah, wish, like that's a crazy spell. And my wife's never really played D&D before. She's really into it now, but she doesn't have a history with all of it. And she's like, this wish spell does not seem that good. This spell seems like there's way too many bad things about it, and it just lets you cast another spell. This seems like a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, because at its best use, you're just casting another spell.
Yeah,
as a 9th level or whatever. Yeah. Like it's really useful
or
as a utility.
Exploding someone.
If you start to go outside the bounds of it, it really fucks up your day.
Yeah,
it does.
And I know this because I took very little damage from enemies in that fight. I took damage from a boat landing on me, and then I kept casting spells and just hurting myself. In season 16, I guess it was right before our Stew adventure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have one final question from the fans. Once again from @GauntPhilosophy. On a scale from terrible to soul destroying, how great do you think the League's vengeance will be for what happened to Gormo?
Man, I hope it's soul destroying. I mean, I'm never like a DM that like roots against the party. If anything, I'm always rooting for you guys. Yeah. I almost like am creating tantamount things for you guys to overcome, and every time you do, especially creatively when you're not turning into clouds, I'm very excited for those outcomes.
I mean, especially if you're doing the recording for this, like the audience wants to hear like the interesting things, like they're rooting for the characters.
Exactly.
It's not if you're running a killer campaign at home with just like your buddies, and if you're playing Tomb of Horrors and you brought 4 character sheets, like it's like, okay, cool, like we're just gonna murder everybody and that's what you want. But when you're coming to like Friday Night Quest, nobody really wants it to be like, okay, well, he casts power word kill on you and you're dead, cool, bye, like
sorry, you're gone forever.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, fun. But like, yeah, I hope that the Velvet League's gloves are off. And I mean, this was their push into, hey, it's bad out there. Also, shit is real. Like, get a hold of yourselves and do something, right?
And it happened to come. This was always going to be the case. You know, you always had the apocalypse waiting in the wings, and you always had Vect waiting in the wings. And we happened to front load that adventure with the most hedonistic nonsense.
It couldn't have worked out
any season.
Now, I expected something like that to come out of Horace running this place, but not nearly to the level that I was like, oh, this will work out thematically so well. But yeah, so I hope the vengeance is strong and crushing, because, not to spoil anything, it's going to be tough. I've definitely look, you guys are going to be level 20 characters very soon. Within the next 2 adventures.
If we make it through the next season, we'll be 20th level at the start of the next.
So, it's going to be matching that kind of level of difficulty, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
And I'm guessing, look, I'm not one of the producers, I'm just a guy. I'm guessing that level 20 is going to be about the last big season that you have with these characters. So
it's going to be close.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, maybe you're in a more risky situation at that point.
I think we have a couple of seasons at level 20. It sounds like, yeah.
Okay, well, see, I don't know. In my mind, I'm like, once they hit 20, the gloves are super off because you'll just kill them at the end of the adventure.
It's very possible. It's going to be not so easy, guys.
Hey, man, please don't.
Please do. They're all jerks.
I mean, hey, man, I would be. I don't know how Sweeney's story ends, even if he makes it out of it. So, I don't know.
Be more creative and kill somebody besides Sweeney. But besides that,
no, I will always be the only person to die on Friday Night Quests.
I'm always trying to kill Horace and Izzy every adventure, and I just always somehow
keep
kill
diving
Sweeney.
in the way.
I tried this time.
That's true.
Actually, Daniel will know this as my DM. It is not uncommon for Mike Christensen characters to die.
Oh yeah. Oh boy.
Not as often as your brother's characters, but semi-frequently.
Yeah, my brother Michael thinks I always want him dead. It's because he makes bad choices. He always assumes it's because I hate him.
Someone did inject, in our Star Wars game, radiation into your brother's character's body to try to see if that would give him superpowers.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach.
It did just melt the skin off his bones.
That's how radiation works.
Yeah, that Star Wars game got very un-Star Wars as it went along.
What, that didn't happen in Empire Strikes Back?
Yeah.
That's the deleted scene from Attack of the Clones.
I know how to fix your missing hand. Yeah.
That's all the questions I've got, other than Jay, you monster, why? No, I'm kidding.
Sorry about that.
I understand why. I'm a GM. I get it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening. Daniel, thank you for coming with us.
Yeah, thank you for hopping on here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you for enduring the Velvet League as much as you were able.
It was not what I was expecting.
I think even when we were giving our descriptions and making stuff up as we went, you were like, can I go somewhere else?
Yeah.
I know this is where the adventure is and this is the game that we're all running, but Stu's going to hate it here. I remember be like, yes, hate it. It's going to be so much more interesting.
I felt I was from a different genre showing up.
That's the fun of having a guest, is really being able to say, okay, we have we are very unstable elements to begin with, the Velvet League, and then we throw in someone who will just be reacting to us. And you always get a very different voice in the game. And yours is very interesting, and we really like having you as a part of the show.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for joining us. And
on that note, it's also very interesting to say, because you kind of posed a question, what would the Velvet League be like if it was just the Velvet League?
And we'll find out in the next season, because we're not having a guest next season. We need to have a little sit down with the second and talk about some stuff. And
remember when we threw out that Stu used to date the second? That was a thing.
Yeah.
No, I remember that setup. Yeah. Never ended up really being it wasn't really the main thrust of season 11, so it just hasn't come up again since.
Yeah.
Stu's character went different directions.
Well, it was also, you ended up just driving the relationship with Izzy more, which ended up being way more interesting.
Yeah, which she ended up not being interested in after that season, but whatever.
No.
I think she
referenced you many times.
I think you just very specifically, after meeting her again, was not super jazzed about that relationship.
I'll tell you this, she has multiple times since season 11 referenced her gorilla boyfriend. And then, it turns out that it was maybe just a ships passing in the night thing, and maybe going back to it was super toxic.
Yeah. What happens in the Feywild stays in the Feywild.
Yeah.
Apparently not.
All right. Well, guys,
we'll be back next week for season 18.
Indeed.
Velvet League Prime. Just, I'm sure, just talking to the second and just asking her a bunch of questions and nothing else.
Yeah, it's going to be a really boring season. It's just going to be a lot of asking questions.
A lot of exposition.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure the league will be very measured and not at all vindictive.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty tame.
Yeah.
Pretty tame season.
Pretty chill.
All right, guys. See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. We'll be back again next week with the first episode of Season 18. And as we said already, this is an all-Velvet League adventure. No guests. And we'll have a lot of questions answered and maybe a few more posed. So please join us for that. It's going to be one heck of an adventure. Also, as we said at the top of the episode, Partial Arc is going to be at Gen Con this year. We're going to be showcasing our new board game, Mortals, at the First Exposure Playtest Hall, August 18th through August 19th. That's the Friday and Saturday. Swing by, check out the game, or just come by to talk to us about Friday Night Quests. Either way, we look forward to seeing you there. And of course, special thanks to Daniel Fernandez for joining us for this Aftermath. He's always great to have on, whether he's playing Stu Wellington or just answering your questions. Daniel, we thank you. Photos and character art can be found in the show notes on partialarc.com. And while you're there, why not check out some of our other podcasts, including Roll the Seas, where myself and Andrew Dickinger discuss the absolute madness of Warhammer 40k. If you have any questions about the show, you can email us at fridaynightquests@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr, all under the handle Partial Arc. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the battlefield.
Yeah, I'm gonna loot the body.
So, how much experience do we get?
Well, now we have a skeleton army, so that's pretty neat.